It's really good at causing a lot of aggravation.
It causes a lot of aggravation. Yeah, it does. It's very aggravating at times. What else does it do?
It creates a 3D model of an object.
Right, a 3D model of an object. So let's say you're designing a house, right? And you want to make drawings of this house. So you draw the front, and you have to draw the back. You're going to need two different pieces of paper. What if you want to look at it from an angle? Those are static, right? But with CAD, you can revolve things, you can look at things from different angles without changing a thing. Everything is in one place. What if you want to export something to a laser printer, or a laser cutter, or a 3D printer? With CAD, done. Plug it in, you get your thing. Right? What if you want to make engineering drawings? Done. Everything's for you. Everything is just done. So it causes a lot of aggravation at times. But in the end, it will make your life a lot easier. Now, for those of you who have used CAD, what software packages do you know? Inventor. Solidworks. Anywhere? Onshape? Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that one today.
Google SketchUp.
SketchUp. So there's a lot of them, right? Let's just look at this quick list. Look at all the options you have. A lot of packages, and they're all different. They do basically the same thing, but you should just try them out and see which ones you like. And if you sort here, you can see which ones are free, which ones cost money. So look at the free ones, tinker around, and see what works for you. So here's an example of SolidWorks. This one is a lot of money, and you can't get it for free. You can see it's like pretty nifty.
SolidWorks.
Yeah, it's a great CAD package, but it's a lot of money. So if you guys, no Macs, Windows only. If you guys ever get the chance to work with this, I would recommend this one. Creo, this is another pretty good package. It's Windows only. Not quite as nice as SolidWorks, but you guys can get this free as students. One downside is I think you need like 8 gigs of RAM. So this might not work for a bunch of you. But you can see you can do a lot of complicated things with it. Imagine drawing this out by hand, and then you want to change something. Like, that would just be a nightmare. Another one, somebody mentioned Inventor. Inventor is just like the other two. You can also get this one for free, can't you?
Yeah.
Students can get Inventor for
Yeah.
free. You could get this one for free, same deal. You need like 8 gigs of RAM. So if you have nice computers, you can get Creo, you can get Inventor. Those are fantastic tools. I would highly recommend getting one of those two, if you can run it. So you need Windows, you need 8 gigs of RAM. If you satisfy those things, go ahead, try them out. I would recommend it. SketchUp. What do you guys think of SketchUp?
Terrible.
It's the worst thing ever. Yeah. But you can run it on pretty weak machines. For simple things like houses, it's fantastic. As soon as you start doing anything more complicated than a box with a triangle on top, things start to fall apart. So if you're doing something simple, SketchUp is a good solution. I think we ran into some issues with the 3D printing though.
Yeah, it doesn't slice nice to 3D printers.
Yeah, if you need to design something to send to a 3D printer or laser cutter, I would not recommend this one because we've been having some issues. Dimensions were off, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the dimensions were off, which is a big deal. Why is it a big deal if your dimensions are wrong?
When you're
Nothing
printing?
fits together.
Because nothing fits together, and if
Waste
nothing
materials.
fits together, what you have is just a useless pile of parts.
That's what Matt said yes.
And so that's what happened to you. Alright, so this one I have never actually used because I just found out about it. It's called 123D. It's made by the same people who do AutoCAD, Inventor, Rivet, some other stuff. So I don't really know about this one. It's worth giving a shot.
Work on Mac.
I don't know. But yeah, like I said, download things, think around, see what you like. Some of you might like this one. This one, I would actually recommend for simple things over SketchUp, because you literally just drag shapes on top of each other and then move them around. So for simple things, Tinkercad, it's web-based, so it doesn't matter if you're Windows, Mac, Chrome, Linux, it'll work. So if you're doing simple, SketchUp, Tinkercad, good options. If you need something other than squares and triangles, you're going to want to look at some other options like Creo, Inventor, or this other nifty one that we've just discovered, and we've been playing around with it for the past week. It's called Onshape. Like Tinkercad, it's web-based, right? So it doesn't matter what you're running on. This will actually even run on your phone. You could do stuff on your phone. That's pretty awesome, because with the other packages, I said you need like, what, 8 gigs RAM, and it's probably 20 gigs storage space, and just all kinds of intensive processing power. But this is done on their servers, so it doesn't matter if you have a crappy little phone with no processing power. They're doing the processing for you, right? So that's like a big deal, because these guys can't handle anything. So I would highly recommend trying this. It's called Onshape. It's fantastic so far. We haven't had any issues with it. It's very powerful. So let's take a look at some of the stuff you can do. The downside is it's all done remotely, so it takes a while to load everything. All right, so here you can see a simple little shape, right? It's just a box with a hole in it. And you'll also notice, unlike some of the other things you've seen, you have these 3 planes, right? Front, top, and right. Those are just technically known as datum planes. But the important thing is they allow you to kind of build things much more easily. You can define references, and it just adds a lot of power to your design. So now you can see as I'm rotating this thing, you can just look at it from any angle, although it's a box, so that doesn't really do much. You can also move around, zoom. But now we can get into the more interesting stuff, right? So let's say I don't really want this to be a box. So you can edit the sketch, and I can say, okay, maybe I want this to be more like a house. And so you could just do that right there. Delete the old line. And now you have something that looks more like a house. Why is that useful?
To make parts that you might not be able to find somewhere else.
I'm sorry?
To make like your own custom parts.
Right. But I'm talking more specifically about just being able to change things that you've done in the past.
You don't have to start over.
You
So
don't?
like you can go back to the first step and change something, and then all your changes after that are just
Right, so it carries through. So you just, exactly that. You go back to the first step that you want to change, you change it, and you're done, right? On some of the other systems, like SketchUp, that becomes a lot more difficult to change things retroactively. So this little history tree right here, it also matters the order that things are in. For example, you can see I have a shell. If I move that shell before the extrusion, then it's not going to work, because it doesn't have anything to shell yet. So the order matters in the history tree. And so that's something you're going to have to be conscious of when you're making changes. The other great thing about this guy is you can do something called section views. And all that means is you basically cut the object wherever you say cut it. So now I'm looking inside of the box. Right? You can see the box is hollow. You can see that nice. When's the time you would actually want to use this section view when you're working on something? You know the answer to this because you did it.
If you want to insert something in the middle.
Right, if you're working on the inside, then you want to be able to see what you're doing. And if you have no way of looking inside, then you can't tell it, I want to make something here. And so you can, whenever you want, open it up wherever, put the stuff that you want in, and take it out. Or you could also just kind of look to see that it's doing the right thing. Like I want to see, okay, is this hole nice and goes through straight? Yes, it goes through straight. And then when you're done, you turn it off, and you're done. All right, now how do we actually make stuff though? Well, you just say, I want a new, make a part. And so you'll see a lot of tools at the top, right? You have extrusions, you have revolutions, you have sweeps, you have lofts, and you don't really need to worry about the other stuff. You might need to know flays and chamfers. Drafting, you might do some drafting. I think somebody actually did. You can shell things, you can make holes. Patterns may be useful for you guys. But the major one is extrusions. And this is pretty much all of SketchUp right here on this one tool. And so how all of these tools work is you make a sketch and you have to pick a plane. You can pick one of the 3 basic planes to start off with. And then you make your sketch. I'm going to make a circle. And then you're going to want to dimension it. And so to dimension things, you click on the little dimension tool. You click on what you want to dimension. And how big should we make the circle? Like a foot. So the circle is now a foot in diameter. So we have a sketch. And so now what we could do is we could just extrude it. We could make that like 100 inches, just because. And so now we've taken our 2D sketch and we've made it into a 3D cylinder. A really, really big cylinder. 100-inch cylinder. Who knows what 100 inches in feet? 100 inches, what's that in feet? It's what?
It's 9 and a bit.
9 and a bit.
It's
8 and a third.
And if it was 100 centimeters, how many meters would it be?
1.
Huh. That's a lot easier. All right, so that's extrusion. So you just basically stretch the sketch up. That's pretty much all it does. You have some more advanced options. I'll let you guys discover those out on your own. Another thing you could do is if we make a new sketch on the same plane, top plane, then you can draw a line. And that line is going to be known as the axis of revolution. And what that means is I can say, okay, I want you to revolve this sketch around this axis. And so then instead of dragging it straight up, it's going to drag it in a circle around that axis. How would you do that in SketchUp?
Follow me.
Follow me.
You know.
It's like the tool as well.
It's a tool. I didn't actually know that, because I always got mad at it before I figured it out. And so there you go. So you have like this donut shaped thing. Another thing you could do is instead of just drawing a simple plain line, you could draw something more complicated. Maybe we'll use the right plane. Yeah. So if we sketch on the right plane and we just make maybe a line, and then we can have an arc. No, wait, not selected. There we go. something called a sweep. And any guesses what this is going to do?
Sweeps.
Okay, which means
It's gonna bring the whole thing into.
it's going to do the whole thing and do that. Well, but what's the do that part?
It's gonna be like a Hershey shape.
So it's going to drag
It's gonna
this
follow the path.
right, and it's going to follow this path. And if I haven't, I've made the circle too big. Oops. So let's make that circle a lot smaller. Make that like 2 inches. And so you can see it just follow the path and it just drags it along. And just with those kind of basic tools of sketching and dragging along paths, you can make some really complicated geometry. Because you just do this a few times and you come up with some really cool parts. And a lot of you have already done this. I hope more of you do, because it's a lot of fun and you can do a lot of cool things with them. We really won't get into lofting or drafting. If you need to, you can kind of do that later. A fillet. Who knows what a fillet does?
Slices it
It slices it. How so?
like you would fillet a fish.
Like you would
It,
fillet a fish.
Like takes.
Rounds the edges.
It rounds the edges, exactly. So let's say you're making toys for kids, right? You're gonna have to do this a lot because kids do not go well with sharp edges. So you just click fillet, you click what you want to fillet, how much you want to fillet it, and ta-da, it's nice and round. This is kind of similar to chamfer, except for instead of rounding it, it just kind of slices it a bit. So you end up with that sliced edge. For anyone who, the only time you need to worry about this right now is if you're giving us files to 3D print, or, yeah, 3D print. Otherwise, it doesn't really add much aesthetically. But if you are doing a 3D print job, then it's important to include those if you want them. A shell, what's that do?
It makes the hole sort inside. Not really a hole. It's like if you shell this.
Right, it's kind of
mod-
self-explanatory, is what you're saying, right? It shells things, so it hollows it out. So if you click that, then you can now see it's hollow. So we've just hollowed the piece out. How do we check to make sure that it actually hollowed correctly? What can we do?
section.
We can do a section view. And I just didn't actually design it correctly because it's not centered. So it's going to be more difficult, but we can just do it along here for now. So if we do a section view along there, hey, look at that. It's hollowed. So if you're designing pieces to be useful, why is it good to be able to hollow things out?
It makes them lighter.
It makes them lighter. Okay, and that's important, that's good, that's one reason. What else?
Can you put stuff in there?
You could put stuff in them. So you guys are specifically going to be 3D printing, right? So if you're 3D printing something that's solid, how long would that take? It would take like a year, and like maybe a few hours after that. But if it's hollow, then instead of taking a year, it would take an hour, or maybe two.
Doesn't MakerBot software processes the model to be hollow.
I actually don't know if you're using Maker here.
Yeah, you can generate supports.
You can? Okay. Anyway, so some other useful tools for this are making holes. Pretty much anybody who is using this is going to want to make a hole somewhere because you're going to be assembling things. And when you assemble things, you usually screw them. And if you screw them, you need a hole to screw into. And so all you do is you say, okay, I'm going to want a hole here. So I'm going to sketch on that bit, and I'm going to make a point. Okay, I've made my point. and I'm going to make a hole. You define your parameters. Okay, those look fine. And we have a hole. And you're done. And when you want to change the hole, you just right click, edit. You can make it different. Done. If you want to move it, you go back to the sketch with the point, you move the point, it's moved. One thing to be careful of when you're making a hole, and this happened a few times, is you have to do the sketch before the hole. Because remember, the order in the history tree matters. So if you move the sketch to after the hole, then it doesn't work anymore. You can see it's highlighted in order to say, oh no, it didn't work. That's because it's trying to use a sketch that hasn't been created yet. Because it can only see what's happened before it. You can't see what happens afterwards. So if we put the sketch back before the hole, then we're good. Another thing you're going to want to do is anytime you do things, you're going to want to actually name what you're doing. So the sweep, we don't want to call it a sweep. We want to call it the main thing. And so now when you're trying to make changes to the main thing, you say, oh shoot, which thing was the main thing? Well, the main thing would be the main thing. Right? Other things like fillet, I mean, I don't know, you could probably do that as fillet. But make sure you rename things, because when you change things later, you're not going to sift through 20 extrusions to figure out the right one. All right, some other cool things you can do with this. And you're just going to have to really play around with any CAD software to get a feel. So this was done with what tool, do you think? Sweep. Any other ideas? Everybody thinks sweep? Good. That was done with the sweep. What about this one? Right, that's revolution. And so if we edit this guy, you could just quickly change the cross-sectional shape. And you could make it a circle, you could make it a square, you could make it whatever you want.
Aleko, we've only got a few minutes. You want to give
Only a few more minutes. All right, last thing you want to do.
rundown on assemblies?
Yep, assemblies. So now you've made your parts, you got to put them together. So what you do is you just put your part in. You can put another part in. And then you tell it, I want to stick this guy here. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, the algorithm is weird, and it always tries to put something inside of the other thing. And so all you have to do to fix that is flip the axis, and that'll just flip the axis. And so now those two things are touching. And if you move them around, they stay touching.
For those of you who use SketchUp, this is probably revolutionary because up until now you've had to create everything in one file and kind of adjust things around until they fit together. Now you can actually create geometrical relationships between parts, and it's not just limited to this. I'm sure Aleko will show you. You can actually create like hundreds of different parts in the same assembly and be able to join them all without having to finally line them up to like plus or minus a millimeter.
And you can define relationships, which is awesome. One last thing, if you have something that looks pretty, I guess we could just do this box. And you want to put something professional looking on your website, you just right click it, create drawing, for view is good, add dimensions, and when it's done, you will have a professional looking drawing. Now, can you imagine that on the website? That looks pretty nice. Right? So I would highly recommend making drawings with dimensions. And we'll get more in depth there when you need to. So yeah, download all this stuff, play around, find one that you like. Onshape is great. I highly recommend it. Have fun, guys. If you get to the table.